Hello everyone, this is David here. We're just about to start this commitment masterclass in a couple of minutes. So I just want to make sure that you have a nice big glass of water, maybe a cup of tea or coffee, and get a nice fresh notepad so that you can take some notes. And perhaps you also want to close the door behind you and turn off your cell phone. Close all those email tabs and instant messaging programs, because I want you to be able to shut out the world for the next hour or so. We're going to be moving along fairly fast, and we've got some very powerful information that we don't want you to miss. And also, I just want to mention that the best learning happens when we're in focused learning, and multitasking doesn't quite allow us to focus and pay as much attention as needed to understand and process these important ideas, exercises, and learning that we're about to share. So please, let's free ourselves of distractions just for the next hour or so, and you can always go back to it afterwards. I mean, it won't cost you anything in life to miss out on a small amount of time on your Facebook news feeds or emails, but missing an insight into the mind of a masculine male could actually cost you a lot, like a lifetime worth of anxiety and fear in your relationships with men. Now, I can see that we have people attending from all over the world, and so I really want to thank you first and foremost for taking the time out to attend this class. Your time is valuable, and if someone was to take an hour of my time, they better have some good value to add. So I would not betray your trust, and I'll make sure that at the end of this hour, you'll say to yourself that this was definitely the most value you could have gotten out of that hour. Now, Renee is right here with me, and we are ready to kick off and get started.
Hey everyone, it's Renee here. I hope you're all doing really well, and thank you for being here with us. It is our pleasure. And I've so been looking forward to sharing with you some things that I've spent many painful hours, days, and years discovering just for myself. Now, the title of this commitment masterclass is How These 3 Simple Words Took a Humiliated and Lonely Woman in a Stagnant Relationship to Getting a Deep Emotional Commitment from her man, and literally got married in 7 days. Of course, we're going to be sharing with you far more than just that. We're going to go through some important details about a man's relationship timeline versus a woman's relationship timeline. And we're going to talk about some myths when it comes to men and commitment. And that will ultimately lead us to the 3 keys to getting a commitment from a man. So my hope for you at the end of this class is to be more of that high value, high status woman that men just easily and naturally want to commit to. Sometimes it's hard to know what high value is to men because most men are masculine and most women are feminine at their core. And so we perceive value in different things. And get this, I've realized over time that sometimes we think we're giving something wonderful to a man, but because in our mind, in the feminine mind, it's value, it can actually instead extract value from a man and make him want to go quiet and communicate less with us. Usually what happens is a man will either want to go deeper into a relationship with you, or he'll want to retract and pull away. You've noticed this, right? And as all women here listening, including myself, have probably experienced this many times over in our lives, right? It hurts when a man pulls away, but my desire for this class is to help you have more moments of complete ecstasy where men climb over each other to want to be closer to you, rather than pulling away from you, leaving you feeling terribly alone and scared about the future. I know many angry women out there assume I want women to fake it and do all this stuff with malicious intent, but it's not at all. You know, it's simply understanding the world from a man's point of view and being less self-involved so that you are that high-value, high-status woman.
Absolutely right, Renee. But before we get started, I must mention that the lady who used the 3 simple words and was married in 7 days, that is definitely not the typical result. And I mean, as crazy and as amazing as it is, I'm not suggesting that the man you're dating, whether it's your boyfriend or your fiance, will suddenly show up tomorrow morning wanting to take your relationship to the next level. Now, it might just happen, but of course, I have no idea what kind of situation you're in, so I can't really make any general promises. But what I can tell you is this. If you pay attention and understand everything that Renee and I will be sharing with you, you will have all the tools and all the skills to know what emotional buttons to push in order to naturally inspire a man to want to commit to you. Now, before we get started, you might be wondering, who we are and why should you even listen to us?
Yeah, so here's a picture of all of us in sunny Melbourne, Australia, with our baby boy Tyson. He's about 7 months old in this photo, and he's definitely a cheeky baby. Also in the picture is our new puppy named Zorro, who's going to grow to be a very, very big doggy, and that's more reasons for us to train him very well.
Well, for those people who don't know who Renee is, she is the founder of thefemininewoman.com, where she educates and empowers women to show up with more value and learn how to deal with men, dating, and relationships. She's the highest paid femininity and relationship expert online, and her work over the last 5 years has influenced literally millions of visitors to her blog and her programs.
Thanks, David, but that's probably because I'm the only paid femininity and relationship expert online.
Perhaps true, but either way, your work has created a massive influence on the internet, and you haven't just impacted, the average woman who has come onto your site, but also celebrities, high-end businesswomen, lawyers, doctors, and even PhD students wanting to cite your articles.
Well, thank you. Doing what I do on The Feminine Woman it's really a deeply etched passion of mine, and I'm just so fortunate to be able to actually have that influence. My work is something that I take really seriously, and I absolutely could not do it without your help, David, and the support of my family. And I also just wanted to mention that for the people who are listening, David and I talk about dating and relationships a lot, every single day. We talk about attraction, we talk about love and commitment, and sometimes we can just go on for hours talking about it.
That's right. It may sound a bit crazy for the people who don't know us, but that's what we do, and that's the sole reason why Renee's work has been so impactful upon so many people. I mean, you don't have to take our word for it. Just look at all the comments and the feedback on her blog and on her Facebook fan page. It's phenomenal.
Thank you, honey, but the credit isn't all mine. I mean, David works so hard behind the scenes to create a lot of our premium content, and he makes all of this possible. We couldn't be doing this webinar without him. I mean, I wouldn't have a clue how to set up a webinar. Without him, this just would not have been possible. Some women think I managed to do it all somehow whilst having a baby, but I actually don't. In reality, my husband is the one who actually makes things happen. He's go, go, go. I just share my ideas. So please, for anyone who's listening, definitely pay attention to what David has to share. It's going to be absolutely valuable. And this is also David's life passion. I'm lucky to have a husband who shares my passion, and I'm also just so proud to have him right next to me, sharing what he has to share, because I just wouldn't trust any other man to come from the right place with this stuff. But I trust David completely. He's earned that trust over the many years that we've been together.
Well, thank you. That's very, very nice of you to say. Anyhow, that's enough about us. We're not here to talk about ourselves. Let's get on with the important stuff in this class. Now, the fact that you've signed up to this Commitment Masterclass tells me something. Here's the reason why I'm guessing you're here. You want to know how to naturally get a man to pay you undivided attention, fall in love with you, and want to take things to the next level with you. You want to know how to deal with him pulling away from you for an extended period of time. You want to know how you can lower his commitment resistance and his defense mechanism so that your man isn't going to resist the process of commitment. Well, one of the first things you have to understand is that a man's relationship timeline or reproductive timeline is completely different to a woman's relationship timeline. You see, men are hardwired differently to women, and therefore they have completely different psychology to women when it comes to looking for a partner and a relationship.
Absolutely.
Most of this is due to our biology. It's our DNA, okay? I want you to understand this. It's in our genetic makeup. It's largely not about how we're raised or how screwed up our childhood was. A man has commitment resistance because he has different biological forces flowing through his body. The very nature of being in a committed relationship could sometimes lower a man's testosterone levels and stress him out, whereas to a woman, it would in fact increase her oxytocin levels, making her feel safe and connected.
Yeah, there was actually one study that pointed this out, and I'm sure I'm not the only woman who's witnessed a man acting really stressed out and, intense when we just want to talk some more to that man and get closer to him. It's kind of like trying to lug a lorry truck all by myself out of a very deep well when a man gets that intense and he starts to kind of pull away from the relationship. You can feel him slipping further and further out of your way, but it's because masculine men just aren't always stimulated and driven to go deeper into a relationship with a woman without the right stimulus and inspiration.
So it's really important that we start to appreciate all the differences that occur in men and women before we look to solve this commitment issue. One of the things that we have to touch on first is the difference in timelines, as I mentioned, between men and women. Men and women have totally different relationship timelines, and it's very important for us to be aware of this. So, Renee, tell us, what does a woman's relationship timeline look like?
Well, let's assume you've found yourself a good man, and let's just say that he's reasonably into you. You have to get the guy interested in you past the first couple of months. There are statistics out there that suggest only 1 in 10 relationships ever get past the 3 months mark. And I think this is a very crucial time in a new relationship because the man usually has to weigh up whether or not you're worth pursuing or not. Getting to that place of exclusivity in a relationship is really important. And the truth is, most of the time, men are simply not interested enough to become exclusive with a woman. So let's assume you found a man who's really into you and you make it past the 3 months. That's great. Now you'll continue dating and finding out more about each other. And let's assume everything is going really well. Within a couple of years, as a woman, you'd probably be quite ready for him to pop the question. And of course, expectations and reality don't always align perfectly, but let's just assume that it does in this case, and you get engaged. Yay, right? The average engagement period is 12 to 18 months. Then you're married. And the logical next step, if you want them, is to have a baby or start a family. This whole relationship timeline of a woman takes about, say, 3 to 5 years if we're lucky. And it's largely driven by time, which can be really quite frustrating, as I'm sure many women out there listening can probably relate really well to this. And as a woman, you'd have a certain set of expectations as time passes by. But the problem is that for a man, he doesn't share the same process. Men have a completely different relationship timeline. So David, could you tell us more about what it's like for a man?
Well, for a man, this process is completely different. A man's reproductive timeline goes something like this. Well, first of all, a majority of men are not on the lookout for a relationship. That's a fact. This is important for you to understand because if most single men could get away with casual sex with a woman, they simply would.
Yeah, and this is simply because for many men, they feel the most free that way. It sounds irresponsible, but not having to take responsibility for the sex because the sex never meant anything in the first place is kind of natural and feels normal for a guy. If you were a guy, you wouldn't feel any different. And now, of course, I know how terrible this sounds to us as females, but all we're talking about here, remember, is just the default wiring of a masculine man. Just the default wiring. But it's nothing for you to fear at all. By default wiring, what we mean is the default mental state a man is in before and without any woman inspiring him to commit emotionally.
That's right, and that's very important for you to mention because in my opinion, it's very important for a woman to actually inspire that commitment from a man. Now, as Renee mentioned, men tend to want to get away with just casual sex because it costs him nothing. The reproductive cost of a man is nothing compared to a woman having to carry a child in her pregnant belly and do all the work that has to go into raising the child. It is a man's default wiring to seek casual sex over a relationship. Most men are not on the lookout for a relationship. This isn't good or bad, it's just a natural condition. Again, default wiring.
Yeah.
I mean, if you produced 300 million new sperm every single day, you would probably feel a little differently. Now, with that said, it is usually a woman's role to invite and draw the man in and create that relationship with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are radiance, and radiance is what attracts a man into a relationship in the first place. If instead we aren't seeking that approval and going out just trying to compete to get more attention, if we knew that we already are radiant just by being, then we would naturally tend to attract a much more devotional man into our lives.
You see, most men are looking to see which woman is interested in him.
I'm sure women have noticed this.
And then, right, if she offers sex without expecting a relationship, well, that's exactly what ends up happening.
Yes, and it happens a lot more often than women feel comfortable with. It's quite scary, actually, at times.
All right, so let's imagine a good scenario. If the woman is able to draw a man into the relationship, great. The man now has to make a conscious or subconscious decision to say, do I want to put all my eggs in this woman's basket, or should I keep my options open? Remember, a man produces 300 million sperm a day. For him to stay in a relationship with you and commit to you and perhaps have babies with you one day, he is sacrificing the possibility of impregnating hundreds, if not thousands, of other women. Remember, 300 million sperm per day.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine what it would be like producing sperm, especially that many in one day. And you know, I won't lie, it's a scary thing for women to accept, and it's a scary thing for me to have to hear, but I've learned that it's not a bad thing. It's just how men are made. It doesn't mean that your man is going to be unfaithful, and it doesn't mean that he wants to be unfaithful. So there's nothing to fear, and men also have other wiring for being totally and completely in love with just one woman only. So there's nothing to fear at all. All we want to do here is to help you appreciate why men are the way they are, so that you can stop getting into bad situations in dating, which is just so easy for anyone to do. And that's because we all make the mistake of assuming that a masculine man who produces 300 million sperm a day are like us.
Now, of course, I just have to mention that in reality, he's not likely to impregnate so many women. But, you know, perhaps back in the day, certain warlords or emperors actually had that power and actually used it. It doesn't happen so much in this day and age. But the important thing to remember is that men still have the same hard wiring due to their biology. So they need to make sure a woman is worth committing to, and making sure that you are worth taking that subconscious risk of missing out on the possibility of impregnating so many women. This is really important for you to understand. And this is why Renee and I have been teaching women to show up as high value, high status, because a man will always evaluate how much value you can bring to the table and whether that's enough for him to want to commit or not. And now, when I say value, I don't mean like money or possessions. Value to a man is a whole range of things, such as a woman's radiance, his attraction for her, how she sees him as a man, and the connection they share, and her personality, etc. One of the biggest factors that influence this decision to commit to a woman is whether the man is in love or not. If he's not in love, then it becomes a struggle and a losing battle trying to get him to commit to you. But if he is, then it's almost like his normal thought patterns as a man had been hijacked, and he actually indeed wants to commit to you naturally. He wants to be deeply involved and committed to you. Now, this feeling literally takes over his world. So, assuming a man is in love with you, this is where a man's relationship timeline takes a giant pause. For a woman, of course, the next step is to get engaged, to get married, and perhaps start a family. I mean, come on, time is ticking, right? But for a man, that urgency to get married simply isn't there. I mean, it's almost never there for a lot of men. Why? Because first of all, men don't really need to feel secure to have a child. So they don't really subconsciously think about engagement and marriage. They don't need all of that to have babies. And the second reason is that men can father children almost until they die. I mean, women can't do that, men can. Another huge discrepancy between the sexes. Think about this. Clint Eastwood, fathered a child at 66 years of age. Hugh Hefner fathered a child at 65. And so I got curious and I did some research. I found out the oldest man to father a child was an Indian father named Ramjit Raghav. I probably pronounced that wrong, who was 96 years old. 96 years old. Think about that. That's crazy, right? Now, I want you to understand and appreciate that men simply don't have the same urgency when it comes to commitment as women do. And biologically speaking, men can wait. And a lot of men do try to drag things out. They don't understand or they can't relate to a woman's need for a commitment most of the time. So women are limited by time. For men who are in a committed relationship, they're under a different stress. They're not limited by time, but rather the idea of resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Men don't think about, oh, we've been together for 4 years. It really should be, our time to get engaged.
I know, we kind of assume that a man will get to that point.
But rather, men think about whether they have enough resources, enough money to actually go through with the engagement, a wedding, and even kids. I mean, kids cost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
It's about getting enough resources together before he's even able to think about engagement, marriage, and kids.
Yeah, and so for a man, it's extremely scary to enter into the world of becoming a family man without first feeling secure in his ability to provide. I recently had this conversation with one of my closest girlfriends. She's been with her man for 3 years now, and they're not engaged yet, but he kept saying to her that he didn't want children, which was kind of heartbreaking for her. And she didn't know how to interpret that. She was just kind of like, well, what do you mean you don't want to have children? But after a while, she was speaking to him and they had a closer moment between them. And he eventually told her that it's not that he doesn't want to have kids, it's that he doesn't feel he is good enough to have them and that he's scared to have kids. Because there are so many other men who set the bar so high for how well a man can provide for his wife and children. It's kind of like women, no matter how pretty we are, there's always competition, there's always prettier females.
And obviously he didn't want to feel like he's not enough as a man, so he would avoid that situation where his fears are going to be exposed.
Yeah.
So, as you can start to see, there are a lot of natural reasons why a man would have resistance to commitment. And I truly believe that it's a woman's job to invite a man into a relationship and create those boundaries required in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you're probably wondering, after understanding all of this, how is it ever possible to get a man to commit to you?
I know some women have come up to me and said that's impossible.
Yeah, a lot of women do believe that, men are going to be men and it's impossible. Well, here's the short and simple answer. You need to become a woman of high value, high status, and become a woman who men would absolutely love to commit to. And then the commitment resistance wouldn't be much of an issue for you at all. And we're going to show you exactly how to become that woman later on in this class when we talk about the 3 keys to getting commitment. Also, I want to mention that there are certain emotional triggers, emotional hot buttons that get a man to want to emotionally commit to you, want to take care of you, and want to be romantically involved with you. And I firmly believe that no matter how commitment phobic a man is, there's always a place inside of him that actually loves to commit. Okay, you just need to find that place and trigger it. It may be harder on some men than others, but I do believe that it's possible with every single male you ever come across. You just need to know and understand his triggers for commitment. So, you've probably been waiting all this time to find out what those 3 simple words were that literally transported a woman who was in that stagnant relationship, who was lonely and humiliated, to getting deep emotional commitment and getting married in literally 7 days. Well, Renee is going to be sharing this with you because the lady that we're talking about was in fact a private client of Renee's. So I want you to hear it from Renee herself exactly what happened and what those 3 simple words were. Renee, can you share with us your amazing story?
Yeah, I'd love to share it. So here's what happened about a year ago. I was speaking to a very frustrated client of mine. I don't really want to reveal her identity because she prefers to remain anonymous, so I'll just refer to her as Mandy. So here's what happened with Mandy. She was just so frustrated because she'd been engaged for so long to her man, 2 years to be exact. And yet, he just wasn't willing to marry her yet, and he just had no plans for the marriage. So she was kind of dingle-dangling in this place, like, are you really serious about this? Is this going to happen? And he kept saying, it will come, just not yet. We just don't have enough money yet. Now, as an attendee of this class, you might not be engaged to a man already, but have you ever been in a situation where a man has made excuses after excuses to you? I think as women, we've all had that experience at some point. I've experienced it. Anyway, so I asked Mandy, what excuses is he making? What is he telling you? And she replied, well, he keeps telling me that we won't have enough money and that he isn't able to pay for a wedding. I sort of nodded and I wanted her to continue on. I could see that she had a lot more to say about it. So she said something like, well, you see, I don't need a lavish wedding. I just want a very simple ceremony. I've told him again and again, I just want something simple, but he's not hearing me. And at this stage of the conversation, I could see the tension and the frustration in her face and in her voice. And we were talking over Skype, by the way. So I just told her to tell me everything she was feeling at the time. She went on and she started telling me how there's been so much friction and tension in her relationship lately. And she explained how humiliated and degraded she was feeling because she'd been a fiancé for so long and that she's not yet his wife, and how hopeless she felt because she didn't know what to do about the whole situation. And I could see these little tears trickling down her face. She just seemed to feel like she had less commitment than my other clients who weren't even engaged yet. And as I was listening to her, I knew that at the core of the issue, she was scared. So I asked her, are you scared that your man would leave you? She paused for a bit. Then she said, yes. Then I asked her, when was the last time she'd cried in front of her man? Kind of like how she was crying in front of me right now. And she replied, well, I've cried in front of him a few times, but I've never broken down kind of cried in front of him. Ah, I see. You mean you may have shed some tears, but you've never been totally vulnerable in your relationship. That seemed to have struck a chord with Mandy. I told her, you know what? The truth is, a man's decision to commit to you is entirely an emotional decision. You can't simply try to convince him through your own frustration, using your own words and logic. You need to use your vulnerability to inspire him to come forward and give him emotional resources to want to commit to you. And for the first time in our conversation, Mandy started nodding. You see, sometimes as women, we feel all these emotions, which makes us naturally vulnerable in the first place, but we keep it on the inside and we don't actively express them. And so men can't respond to us. They just cannot respond to what they don't see. So I made a suggestion to Mandy. I said, Mandy, he won't commit unless he sees and feels your vulnerability. And of course, as most women do when I suggest this to them, she said, but how do I be vulnerable? How do I show him it? Well, great question. Here's how. Say these 3 words to him. Tell him, I am scared. Then there was a moment of silence between us. I could tell Mandy was just letting all of that sink in. And the next moment, she started crying and tears were running down her face, and she said to me, I've never said anything like that to him before. And I secretly smiled because I knew that this was new territory for her. I told her, yes, that's exactly why you need to do it now. So before our conversation ended, she made a promise to me. She promised to me that she would say that to her man that very same day. So we went our separate ways, and a few days passed, and I didn't hear from her. Okay, that's no problems. Then, exactly 7 days after our conversation, I see this email from Mandy in my inbox, and I got so excited, and I still remember seeing it. I still remember that moment of seeing it in my inbox because her subject line was in all caps. I am married. And all she wrote in the email was just one single sentence. She said, we got married today. Thank you. I literally jumped out of my seat. I got so excited, and I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? And so the 3 words that were responsible for my client Mandy to going from that stagnant position in her relationship where she felt scared, humiliated, and embarrassed to being married in literally 7 days was simply, I am scared. Why? because it explicitly shows vulnerability and it gives a man emotional reasons to step forward and want to take care of you. Too many women in this day and age have been socially conditioned to be okay with everything and to show no signs of vulnerability. And this is just robbing women of their natural sense of aliveness. Remember, men cannot respond to your feminine energy if you try to cover up all your emotions and act like you have everything figured out. The truth is, your emotions are powerful and they have the power to inspire a man to emotionally commit to you deeply and completely.
That's right on point. A woman's emotions are truly powerful, and it's something that women need to not be afraid of. And by the way, that was one heck of a story.
Thank you. It was really my pleasure to be there helping this lady go through this process and just to witness her transform herself and her relationship. It was so ecstatic for me to see that. I was really happy to know that I'd made such a positive impact in her life.
I mean, when you first told me this, I was totally blown away.
Yeah,
I mean,
I remember.
I could not believe that this woman got married within 7 days. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
And you were really excited too.
I was. To make a wedding happen within a week, I mean, there must have been a huge and intense reason for a man to take action and make that happen for the woman. So for all the attendees of this class, I want you to start seeing the power and the impact of these little things that can have in your relationship. Simply telling your man that you're scared conveys just so much to a man and it allows him to be more of a man in your life.
Yeah, that's that value that we're talking about.
Right. Actually, I have a story of my own to tell. So after I heard this story from Renee, I decided, you know what? I would share some of these insights with some of my own clients. And one of them was a lady who was in a situation where she was dating a man who was more or less a player, right? He had no intentions, absolutely no intentions of settling down with her at all, but rather he actually wanted to be a full-time photographer taking photos of half-naked women. And to make matters worse, right, my client accidentally fell pregnant to him, knowing that he had absolutely no intentions of being in a relationship with her. Now, this is what I call a bad situation. So I got talking to her and I taught her the importance of high-value vulnerability, and I got her to think of everything that she was scared of at the time. And I told her to tell this guy everything that she was scared of. Now, it was hard for her to say that because she was in the army, and for her, it was all about being courageous, all about feeling strong and capable. And so this vulnerability thing just didn't come easily. But long story short, I convinced her that this is what she needs to do. So she organizes a time and starts telling this guy all these things that she's scared of. You know, I'm scared about what's going to happen to me. I'm scared that I'll have to go through this pregnancy alone. I'm scared that I won't have any income to support this pregnancy and this child. I'm scared that I'll have to move back with my family, and I'm scared that they won't treat me very well. And they had this huge discussion, and what was amazing was that for the very first time, the man turned around and showed some sensitivity and some of his own vulnerability, and had this really, really good heart-to-heart talk. And from that point on, they started dating again and started really enjoying themselves. And what I found out many weeks later was that this non-committal man, this man who wanted to stay a bachelor forever and meet more women, had decided to stick around and eventually move in with my client and raise the baby together with her. I mean, that is just fantastic, isn't it? This is a way better result than what I could have hoped for. They even updated their Facebook relationship status from being single to being in a relationship to each other. And we all know that if you update your Facebook relationship status, that is serious. Now, I know for all the attendees of this class, you may think, surely this is just too simplistic. You know, I can't just say I'm scared and my man will suddenly out of the blue and start to be more interested in me. No, of course not. Okay, of course not. Getting a man to commit deeply and emotionally is so much more than just these simple 3 words. But let me tell you the reason why my client and Renee's client got their man to change their behavior so radically and so quickly. The reason why this all works is because of the concept I call high value vulnerability. High value vulnerability. When you express high value vulnerability in a way that men understand it and can feel it, then he has almost no choice but to instinctively respond to that. The key here is that you have to express it in a way that men understand it and get it, right? You want the men to get it. It's no use feeling vulnerable on the inside, like Renee said, but not letting a man see that. He's not going to respond to what he can't see or feel.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't remember anything from this class, just remember this. It's all about the vulnerability that you express. Don't hide it, show it. And ideally do it in a high value way. That's why we call it high value vulnerability. Keep this concept inside of your mind. This is the exact emotional hot button that inspires and allows men to want to commit to you.
Now, I know there's a lot of outdated and bad information out there about men and commitment. So let's just take a few minutes to clear those up before we move on. The first myth is that you need to find reasons to convince a man to commit to you. That is terrible information. Because the truth is, a man will only commit to you for their own emotional reasons. Emotional reasons. He needs to feel something that compels him to want to get involved with you. You see, logical reasons don't make men want to take action. It's not going to convince him. You can't just convince a man to want to commit to you. On the other hand, emotions and feelings do. Okay, so I want you to remember, men will only commit to you for their own emotional reasons. The second myth is that if you stay long enough together, he'll have no choice but to commit to you. So you just have to sit tight and wait for it. Personally, I think there is no worse advice than just wait for commitment to happen. It just doesn't work like that. Look at a beautiful woman like Kate Beckinsale. Arguably one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood, rated by all these magazines, yet years ago, she was with a man who just wouldn't propose to her and never took things to the next level with her. And after 8 years of that, she felt so humiliated that she had to break things up with him. She had just enough of it. So waiting it out is a bad idea. Remember, men don't have the same relationship timeline as you do. Moving on to the next myth, the third myth, is that there is no way to get a commitment-phobic man to commit to you. I mean, this is just completely fearful thinking and certainly not based on anything real or true. Because reality is, right, every single male has that hard wiring to want to commit to a woman. You just need to know what's going to trigger that and how to lower his resistance. Now, I hear from women all the time that some previously married men state very clearly that they don't ever want to be married again. But think about it. Haven't we all said something at one stage and went back on our word?
Yeah, and I mean, if we were really honest with ourselves, we'd know that what people say isn't always what they do. Which is a good thing, especially since very often when a man says he's never getting married again, he could actually be communicating from a place of hurt, and in reality, that's a call for help. A call for a reason to have hope again, that a woman could love him fearlessly and be the woman who makes him feel like a man in a relationship. Absolutely.
So I think the more empowered position to take on this is that if you can find those emotional triggers and become a commitment-worthy woman, then you can inspire any man to commit to you deeply. The next myth, the fourth myth, is that men don't like your emotions, so you should hide them and make them wrong. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Sure, men don't like it when women specifically use so-called drama in order to manipulate and control men. But you would never have those bad intentions like that, right? You see, if your true intention is to get in touch with your emotions rather than trying to manipulate or blame your man, then not only will you feel more alive in your own body, but your man will also appreciate that aliveness and want to take care of that aliveness. The truth is, when a man falls in love with a woman, he is literally falling in love with the feminine energy inside of her, which is pure emotion in flow.
Yeah.
It's a woman's freedom of emotion that is so appealing to men. As long as she doesn't always make him wrong or judge him, those are the things that's going to make him go the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times what women are actually doing is covering up their feelings when they make a man wrong or blame him. Even if we don't intend to blame him, it comes out that way and it makes a man feel blamed because it's not pure emotion. All it is just a statement or an observation that we're making or a passive-aggressive criticism. And, that never inspires any man to want to commit. Why would he want to commit to that?
And look, here's the thing. If you hide your emotions or trying to push them down all the time, then you've essentially killed the polarity that you could experience with masculine men. And the men you do attract will be weak and flimsy men.
Yeah, or you end up in that kind of relationship where it's a bit 50-50 and it feels neutral, like you don't really feel that passionate about him. So you're kind of on the lookout still, but you just keep him around. And that's not a good position to be in. It's painful, it's less than you can be, and it's just not nice. So with that said, I just want to share one more myth, and I'd like to bust it, of course. So this myth is myth number 5. Myth number 5 is that tears turn men off. I remember there was a relationship and dating coach once who sent out an email saying something like, it's been proven that tears turn men off. And this is something I'd be very wary of believing, at least in those words that they've expressed it. Tears might produce a tenseness in men. Just like when a woman's baby cries, a mother's baby cries, she might get tense. But this tenseness is actually, quite often, it's the source of inspiration that makes a man want to do something about the tears and fix the issue. By the way, it's also how you cry. How you cry is important. I mean, I know of women who've found that their man gets an erection when she cries. So much for being turned off by a woman's tears.
More like a turn on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you authentically shed tears, then it's intuitive for men to want to help and want to take care of you. But I think sometimes women hold their tears in so long that when it does come out, it comes out in this semi-aggressive way, and maybe that's what would have men backing off. So before we move on to the main course of this class, which is the 3 critical keys to getting commitment, let's do a quick recap of everything we've covered so far. We've talked about how differently a woman's relationship timeline is compared to a man's relationship timeline. And for a man, he doesn't usually have the same urgency to move things forward as a woman would. So it's important for women to really guide this process of commitment. We need to firstly become a woman who is worthy of commitment from a high quality man. And secondly, we need to understand what key emotional triggers make a man want to commit. For example, high value vulnerability is one of those big emotional triggers, right? We talked about the power of the 3 little words, I am scared. And it expresses the concept of high value vulnerability. So at this point, I think we should go into the 3 critical keys to getting commitment. If you can understand these keys to getting commitment, then it gives you incredible power in naturally getting men to want to commit to you regardless of how attractive you are or not, how smart you are or not, or how confident you are or not. It will just come naturally. And when that happens, what you realize is that men actually love to commit, right? Men actually love to commit. I know what I just said can be very controversial. Men love to commit. Are you crazy? I know. So I'm going to add on an if. Men actually love to commit if he's able to feel more like a man by committing. In other words, if a man is able to feel more like a man by committing, then he most likely will. If he doesn't feel more like a man by committing, then he most likely won't. So let's make a little paradigm shift right now. And instead of asking questions of, is that man going to commit to me or not? Let's ask ourselves a new question. Let's ask, is this man going to feel more manly for committing to me right now? Or how is this man going to feel more manly for committing to me right now?
It's a really good question to ask. It puts us in a man's shoes, which we're rarely in.
That's right. And there's always power when you put yourself in a man's shoes. So, key number 1. We need to understand that men are naturally attracted to two different types of women. Women who fall into the basket of his one and only, or women who end up in the basket of his one of many. So in other words, whenever you meet a man, he is subconsciously categorizing you into one of these two baskets. He's either seeing you as his one of many or his one and only. Now, of course, the significance of this is huge because men will almost never commit to his one of many. We're talking about true commitment here, which, in my definition, it's a deep sense of emotional commitment.
Yes, not just marriage.
Not just marriage, emotional commitment. And by the way, emotional commitment is the hardest type of commitment to get from a man, right? It takes so much more to get a man to be emotionally invested in you than for him to just call you his girlfriend or his wife. And by the way, do men sometimes stay in a relationship because it's convenient and perhaps they're just waiting for something better to come along? Absolutely, right?
Yeah, just like women do as well. As many women will admit, we often secretly think to ourselves that it's better to be in a relationship than to not be in one at all to avoid loneliness.
That's right, loneliness sucks. So in order for a man to give you his true emotional commitment, you have to be in his one and only category. That's a must. I mean, I'm sure I don't have to convince you of that. But you're probably wondering, how can we influence a man so that he would see us in that one and only category? Well, the answer lies within that little concept that I mentioned earlier. Do you remember what it was? High value vulnerability, right? By showing up as a woman with high value vulnerability, what you do is you maximize your chance of being the man's one and only. Now, the problem here is that most women find it incredibly difficult to find comfort in that space of vulnerability. It's so difficult to be vulnerable these days, right?
Yeah.
See, most of us, we live in this masculine society where we just have to go all day long. There's simply no room to slow down and really slow down and get in touch with that softer and more vulnerable part of ourselves. And sometimes when a woman feels vulnerable, she doesn't necessarily express her vulnerability. She feels it on the inside, but on the outside, she's still got her poker face on, or she's still looking like she's a warrior.
Yeah, absolutely.
The unfortunate thing is, men can't respond positively if they don't see or they don't feel your vulnerability. I mean, if they see a warrior face, they're going to treat you like a warrior.
Yeah, by the way, I wanted to say that it's not that men don't, it's not that they deliberately intend to hurt women by deliberately ignoring their vulnerability. It's that they just cannot perceive it. Sometimes it needs to be extremely explicit. It needs to be real. The emotion has to be real, and that's high value.
That's right. So you can't just feel it on the inside because it doesn't trigger anything in men unless you really allow yourself to express it. You really got to allow yourself to express it.
Yeah.
Man can't respond to what they don't see or feel. Now, let me tell you exactly why high value vulnerability works so well in getting a man to emotionally commit to you. It's because authentic vulnerability inspires a man to want to take care of you, and it makes him feel good about himself for doing so. It makes a man feel more manly by being there for a vulnerable woman. And not only that, but it gives him a sense of purpose in his otherwise extremely boring life. I mean, trust me, ladies, the life of a masculine man, no matter who he is, no matter whether he's a celebrity or a janitor, it's as boring as watching grass grow.
I like that analogy.
It's like,
sometimes you really do look that bored.
Yeah, that's how it is in a masculine world. It's like an ocean with no waves, and it's your job to put those waves in his ocean. There's nothing that gives man more instant purpose like when he's taking care of a high-value, vulnerable woman. And the high value is important because men don't take advantage of high-value women. There are plenty of women in this world who are vulnerable, but they're a pushover, and because of that, they're showing up as low-value women. I don't want you to be like them. I want you to be high value, which means you come from the mindset that you are valuable, you are respect worthy, and you are not willing to settle for being treated badly.
Yeah, and that it's okay for you to have emotions, and you respect your emotions no matter what a man thinks of you feeling those emotions.
Absolutely. See, a low value, vulnerable woman is going to end up being abused by a man because she simply won't stand up for herself. But on the other hand, a high value but not vulnerable woman is going to attract men, but those men aren't likely to stick around. I mean, think about it. Why would a man want to stick around if there's no room for him to be a man in the relationship? He simply wouldn't want to stick around. So vulnerability gives him that room to be a man and feel like a man.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you believe that I even have close friends, not just clients, but close friends that, when I sit down and speak to them and find out more about their relationships, we have our girly talks, I realize that if I tell them the story about this lady who got married in 7 days and I told them the 3 words, some of them will look at me and be like, I've never said those words to them, to their man, and they've been with their man for years. And I think to myself, how is that even a relationship? And I think it's a very valid consideration. How is that even a relationship? In the sense that it needs to go deeper than that. It has to go deeper than you're just not willing to share any vulnerabilities.
That's right. Depth is everything.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to point out about what David just said about getting treated badly or getting taken advantage of by men. This is kind of uncomfortable for women to hear because we think men should just automatically treat us well by default. But that's just not the case. It's really hard to take this, but it's just not the case. By default, any human being will unintentionally take advantage of someone just because one party of the two contributed to this pattern of treatment. Usually a woman who's looking for approval gets stuck in a very bad relationship cycle because the man has hooked this woman through her needing of approval. So her needing of approval has created this pattern as well. See, the man may know it consciously, but he may also not know it consciously that he's treating her badly. Either way, it doesn't benefit anyone to blame men. I honestly believe we are so much stronger and get the choice of the best men when we are courageous enough to take full responsibility for how we contribute to the patterns of relating in a man and woman relationship. When we change and when we become high value, the ex-boyfriends in our lives will turn around and go, oh my God, why did I let her go? What was wrong with me? But by then, we've already moved on.
So high value is very, very important. I just want to mention that men abuse women, but on the other hand, women abuse men just as much.
Yeah, of course.
It just comes out in a different way.
Yeah.
Right? So as we've already established,
By the way, it usually comes through, sorry for interrupting, It usually comes through in words. Women are very artful with their words at times.
Yeah, the abuse is probably equal, but it just shows up differently.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the more a man feels capable and the more he feels manly, the more likely he's going to commit to you. This is not some, stupid ego boost for men. This is literally giving the man the gift of having a purpose and giving emotional reasons to want to commit. So you need a perfect mixture of this high value and this vulnerability. Now, I just want to clarify something. Vulnerability is not submissiveness. Now, I'm not suggesting that women should always be submissive, etc. That's garbage. That's old school thinking. That's from the 50s. Vulnerability is not about being submissive. It's about having depth and feeling your emotions and actually being okay with having your emotions. Being vulnerable means that you're actually in touch with your emotions. You see, so many women these days try to push down all these emotions that they feel, and this is creating such a barrier in the connection that they feel with men.
Yeah, so we really just have to go back to our animalistic feeling in the gut in order to trigger the best in our man, and that best will get you the commitment without you even pushing for it ever.
So remember this, the more you can express that vulnerability that you feel on the inside, the more likely a man is going to respond positively towards you. And it's also going to repel all the bad men or the men that you shouldn't be with. And that's why the 3-word phrase, I am scared, works so well. Because you're literally expressing vulnerability through words that he can understand. But the biggest challenge that most of us face is that we're just not comfortable with our own vulnerability. So if that's you, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to a mirror and say to yourself, look at your reflection and say to yourself, I am scared. I am scared. And tell yourself everything that you're scared of.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
Just keep going and just let it all out. I'm scared that I might grow old alone. I'm scared that I won't make that deadline. Whatever comes to your mind, say it out loud to yourself in the mirror. No one has to see you. Just do it for yourself. And every time you do this, you become one step closer in getting in touch with your own emotions, your own vulnerability. And keep doing this until you are absolutely comfortable saying that in front of someone else. Remember, every time you say it to yourself, you're getting more comfortable with that. So the first key here is that you have to be a man's one and only, and to do that, you have to express high value vulnerability. The next key is very important. There are two driving forces behind the commitment process. They are a deep sense of attraction and a deep sense of connection. You see, the speed in which the commitment progresses is in direct proportion to the amount of deep attraction and deep connection. In other words, the more attraction and the more connection you build with your man, the faster and deeper he'll commit. But here's the caveat. It must be attraction and connection with depth.
Yeah.
That's why I said deep attraction, deep connection.
Yeah.
So many women are able to attract men on a surface level, but that surface level attraction gets boring really quickly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have depth, then it doesn't last. I mean, has there ever been a time where a guy was initially very interested in you, but he lost that interest after a few weeks or months? Or maybe such a thing would never happen to you, but maybe you know a friend who's had this happen to them, right? So all we have to do here is we have to know how to create a deep sense of attraction and connection. I want you to become more interesting as time goes by. I want you to become more mysterious as time goes by. This is something that very few women understand. Remember, deep attraction actually has nothing to do with your looks or even how confident you are, but it has everything to do with your ability to understand what actually triggers attraction in the first place. I'm going to share something very important with you. One of the most powerful techniques I want to share with you right now in triggering attraction with men is called the push and pull. What the push and pull is, it's making opposing comments in succession. So let me give you an example. You know what? You're the craziest guy I've ever met. No, I'm just kidding. You're so boring. God. Well, how about this one? Do you know what I really love about you? What? Nothing. Nothing at all. I'm just kidding. No, you're okay. You're okay. Now, you see, push and pull works so well because you're keeping your man on his toes and you're being unpredictable, and it also makes you look more high value. This is really good to use if you ever feel like, you're being a little too needy in the relationship. It's like martial arts. You see, if you keep pushing someone, eventually they'll push back. But if you suddenly stopped pushing and instead you pulled, what happens? The other person will fall right into you.
I really like that analogy. You're always the analogy king, David.
See, I want you to see that your job is to throw the man off balance a little bit. Metaphorically speaking, of course, because attraction only occurs when it's unexpected. Remember, the moment we start becoming predictable is when things start to get boring and you lose that sense of mystery to you. This is something that isn't exclusively designed for the dating period. I mean, Renee and I do this all the time to each other, and it never gets old. And so this push and pull is just one technique out of many that works very effectively in triggering attraction in men. And if you feel like, I don't know if something that I can do or not, or I don't want to sound weird or anything, then this push and pull is something that you definitely have to practice first, or at least to yourself first. See, the best thing about this is that it's meant to be fun. And anytime you inject fun and unpredictability into your relationship, it's a good thing. So start practicing push and pull. You can use those two lines that I mentioned before, or you can come up with your own. My goal is for you to get completely comfortable with doing this push and pull on anyone. And also, one other thing that I want to mention, if you want to establish a deep level of attraction and connection with a man, and you want him to commit to you deeply, then you need to cultivate a level of depth within yourself. How deeply and emotionally a man commits to you is in direct proportion to how much emotional depth you have within yourself. Okay, I'll say that again because it's important. How deeply and emotionally a man commits to you is in direct proportion to how much emotional depth you have within yourself. And now I know sometimes it's scary to allow yourself to go deeper and become more vulnerable. But I know that you are courageous, or else you wouldn't be here attending this class.
That's true. I just love what you're saying here. I've never heard you say this, but it really resonates with me, and it doesn't sound like it's a hard thing. It's really just being more of who we already are.
So maybe it's time to take a small step outside your comfort zone and try something new. Look deeper within yourself and you'll find that space that allows a man to be deeply committed to you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the last key to getting commitment. The last key is that you have to understand that all masculine men will have at least some resistance to going deeper with a woman and taking things to the next level. And so you need to have the skill to be able to lower a man's commitment resistance, lower his defense mechanism, and therefore allow the natural commitment process to take place. You see, I've known great guys, like really nice guys, who have been in relationships forever, right? For years, and have absolutely no plans of taking things to the next level. These are wonderful, nice guys, generous guys. And it's not because they're not attracted to their girlfriends. It's not because they don't want to give to their girlfriends. It's simply because these men perceive that they'll lose their freedom if they were to be more involved with a relationship with that woman. And by the way, this isn't just exclusively men who feel this way. Women do as well, right? I'm sure you've had the feeling of being smothered in a relationship, or that you just need some space for yourself. Well, it's the same with men, but it just happens that men tend to have a higher need for that freedom or that space, generally speaking. Freedom is one of the last things men would ever want to lose, and this causes a lot of resistance in men to commitment, or to the idea of commitment, and to long-term relationships. But think about this for a moment. Think about this. What if he is able to experience a deeper level of freedom as he commits deeper into your relationship? Think about that. Wouldn't that be amazing? Well, it's possible, but it's going to take you as the woman to help guide him down that path and make him feel safe and secure about his freedom. Think about it. After all, isn't freedom just a perception? Isn't it just all in our heads? So what if you could have that feeling of freedom in a long-term committed relationship? Then there will be no need for a man to fear the loss of it, right? Does that make sense? So here's something so simple that you can do. You can simply say to him that you would never take away his freedom. That you would never take away his freedom. Just by stating that to him, he'll instantly relax. Now, I know men don't need reassurance, but they do. You get what I'm saying? And he may not tell you that he feels better because you said it, but you'll see it on his face. His face will relax. That underlying tension will go away. And it's all about simply addressing this issue. Instead of running away from it or sweeping it under the carpet, address the issue. And by the way, too many women are afraid to express exactly what they want or need in a relationship, or they don't know how to express it. Once you're able to lower a man's commitment resistance, it becomes infinitely easier to express exactly how you feel and tell him what you need in the relationship, because he's going to be way more receptive without his defenses up. Remember, men don't have the same relationship timeline you do, and some of them would subconsciously try to drag things out for as long as possible. It's not his fault, that's just how it is. So, one of the most important skills you could have is to know exactly what to do to lower that commitment resistance and know what to do when your man pulls away. How do I invite my man back into the relationship in a high value way when he's pulled away? How do you create the space for a man to commit deeper to you without having to directly ask for it? Now, unfortunately, we simply don't have the time to go through everything in this class. I've really had to squeeze as much information into this class as possible. There's just so much more that Renee and I would just like to share with you. So many more distinctions, breakthrough concepts, ideas, and details, but we just don't have the time in this class. Fortunately, here's what we've done. We've made it possible for you to continue this journey with us if you wish, because Renee and I would love to help you. We would love to give you exactly our blueprint, our experience and guidance, and personally walk you through the whole process of how to inspire a man to commit deeper to you. So right now we've come to a fork in the road, so to speak, where you're going to have to make a choice for yourself. You can take all this information that we've given you today and try to figure out the rest in your own life and in your own relationship. I mean, you have to agree, we've given you a lot of information to think about and evaluate. Or you're invited to continue along this journey with Renee and I, and we'll show you exactly what works and what doesn't. So here's how we're going to do it. Renee and I want to personally lead you through a 4-week interactive class where we work with you on how to master this idea of high-value vulnerability, how to exactly create and establish that deep sense of attraction and connection and mystery with your man, how to overcome any resistance or any defenses he may have with commitment so that your man will see you as his one and only and naturally want to take your relationship to the next level. Now, we've named this program Commitment Control 2.0. This is a brand new and upgraded version of our original Commitment Control program. Version 1 was amazing. People loved it. The reception was fantastic. But version 2.0 is going to be absolutely out of this world. Now, if you thought this class was valuable, this 4-week interactive class is going to absolutely blow you away. So let's quickly look at what we'll be covering in Commitment Control 2.0. Now, in week 1, we're going to start off by addressing a very important question. Will your man ever commit to you? And more importantly, what is it going to take for him to start committing to you at a deeper level? One of the key things there is, of course, to become your man's one and only and get away from that category of one of many. But this can sometimes be easier said than done, especially when you've already established yourself in a certain way with a man. So we're going to address that, and I'm going to teach you about the important difference between indicators of interest versus indicators of commitment. You see, you as a woman need to know at every single moment whether your man is worth your time or not. Remember, your relationship timeline is different, is completely different to a man's timeline. So your time is by far worth more. You need to accurately gauge whether your man is only just interested in you right now, or is he actually showing signs of commitment? These are very, very different indicators. And again, this ties into knowing whether you're the man's one and only or just one of many. We're going to go inside the male brain, and I'm going to talk about the 3 main moment-to-moment goals for a man and how that affects you. Remember, the more your man feels successful, the more he is able to commit to you and the relationship. If he feels like a failure all the time, he's not going to want to show up anymore, right? So it's important that your relationship is set up where you and your man both succeed. Another issue you may face is that sometimes you may feel like you're just giving too much in the relationship and not getting anything back in return. So we'll definitely address that issue as well. Also, Renee's going to help guide you in a specific way to reconnect with your man after he's pulled away or withdrawn. Now, this is a very important skill that you should not take lightly, because how you deal with your man pulling away will directly influence how he shows up the next time in the relationship. So Renee is going to show you a specific test to see how much your man actually cares about you. and a specific way to reconnect with him in a high value, playful way without you looking needy or desperate. So that's week 1. Moving on to week 2, I'm going to show you the 3 mandates of attracting a commitment-friendly man. What signs to look for and what do they mean? We're going to talk about high-value vulnerability. And I'm going to walk you through step by step how to express high-value vulnerability to your man, but also I'm going to show you dozens of examples of what is high-value vulnerability and what isn't. I'm going to give you an exercise to do that will open your eyes to how your energy, your feminine energy, can instantly make a man want to take care of you. Also in week 2, we're going to focus a lot on triggering a deep sense of attraction and cultivating a sense of mystery around you so that men can't help but remember you, become fascinated by you, and keep thinking about you. Now, this is deep attraction. This is the type of attraction men won't get bored of after a few weeks or months. We're going to talk about the mindset of being a high-value, high-status woman. Now, I've already explained how important this is. If there's one thing I want you to take away from everything I teach, that is be a high-value, high-status woman, and everything else will fall into place. Also in week 2, Renee's going to show you and explain to you an advanced topic that is light and dark attraction. Light and dark attraction. See, there are 2 different types of attraction, and both are extremely valuable to man for different reasons. You need to understand and tap into both, or else you may just come across as a boring, one-dimensional woman. Lastly, in week 2, I'm going to show you the 3 steps to effortlessly overcome your man's commitment resistance and magically lower his defense mechanism no matter how much he's resisted commitment in the past or how many excuses he's given you. And I'm sure this is going to be useful for a lot of women out there. Moving on to week 3, we're going to focus more on the other driver of the commitment process, which is building a deep sense of connection. And the connection that I'm talking about here isn't just some flimsy, oh, I know his favorite food type of connection. I'm talking about a connection that is so deep that he's going to feel like he's known you forever. Or maybe he's known you in a different lifetime. He's going to feel like you're his soulmate. I mean, this type of connection simply doesn't come about very often in a lifetime, especially for men. So I can guarantee your man will treasure that deep heart-to-heart connection with you. You're going to learn how to create an unbreakable trust in your relationship. But why is that important? Because the truth of the matter is, for a man to commit deeply in a relationship, it is a very vulnerable position for him to be in. He needs the trust that you'll make him feel safe in that relationship. And this is by far overlooked by most women because sometimes it's easy to assume men feel safe all the time. And this is simply not true. And in a committed relationship is where a man can feel the least safe because it's not always familiar to men. Most men fear commitment partially because of the uncertainty that comes with a committed relationship. It is a little foreign to men. So building that trust will definitely help bridge that gap for you. Also in week 3, I'm going to show you how you need to test your man's commitment. How you need to test your man's commitment. You see, as you get more and more involved with your man, you need to become more and more sensitive and more aware of how much he's actually committing to you. With that knowledge, you can make the right decisions moving forward, but without that knowledge, you're going to make mistakes after mistakes with him. Also, one of the biggest problems that you may encounter is that you realize not every single man knows how to commit in the way that you may appreciate. In fact, most men have very little idea of what commitment looks like to a woman. I mean, I've been guilty of this so many times in the past. This is why it's almost imperative that you as a woman need to guide him, need to teach him on how to commit to you. And this doesn't mean that you have to sit him down and lecture him. There are much more subtle ways and under-the-radar methods to teach a man to commit to you in the way that you want. And so I'm going to go through that in week 3 of Commitment Control 2.0. Week 4, moving on to week 4, we're going to get a little bit more advanced. We're going to cover some advanced facets of high-value vulnerability. I'm going to explain why some of the most common dating and relationship advice is absolutely rubbish and totally detrimental to your expression of high-value vulnerability and femininity. There are certain things that will trigger a man to take care of you and be there for you that you may think are crazy, but they work. Other women may even judge you for it, but the thing is, they work really, really well. You see, we're here to learn about how to inspire a man to want to commit to us, and sometimes we simply can't please everyone along the way, especially some of your girlfriends or other women you know. So in week 4, I'm going to show you exactly how to escalate the level of commitment in your relationship in small yet consistent steps, so you're never going to be stagnant in your relationship. You're going to learn how to build positive commitment associations that allow your man to actually feel good as he naturally falls into the relationship with you deeper and deeper. I'm going to talk about the journey from dating to getting married and how you should approach the whole topic, regardless of your situation right now. Now, I know some women are with men who feel like they don't have enough resources or enough money to get married right now. So I'm going to show you how to get around that money obstacle. At the same time, make your man feel like a man. Remember, men are much more likely to commit to you if they felt like a capable man. Plus, I'm going to reveal the 5 key moments of commitment I personally went through from the first moment I met Renee to giving my vows on our wedding day. You see, even for a man like myself, I still had to face these certain moments in our relationship where I had to consciously decide, do I want to take this further or do I back out right now? Looking back on these moments, those were critical moments that defined the outcome of my relationship. And I guarantee similar moments will play a pivotal role in your relationship. There were a few key elements that influenced me to go deeper instead of pulling away, and I'm going to share with you what they were. Because I want you to have the power that comes with knowing what to anticipate for. Now, of course, there's a lot more in Commitment Control 2.0 that I didn't mention because we're on a time limit here, and we're already going over time. But what you need to understand is Renee and I have produced hands down the best program of its kind when it comes to men and commitment. Our previous members think so, we think so, and I'm sure you'll think so too. So here's how it all works. This program goes over the space of the next 4 weeks. Everything is going to be delivered in our beautifully designed library portal. Now, there are 7 videos per week, which adds up to a lot of content really, so take your time going through everything. Now, of course, I understand you may have a very busy schedule already, just like me. So what I've done is I've converted every single video into an audio MP3 so that you can upload that to your MP3 device and perhaps listen to it in the car on the way to work. And also, I know that there are a small percentage of women who love to read. So I've taken the time to meticulously transcribe every single video for those who love to read. And as you go through these videos, these audios, and these exercises, you may have certain questions regarding the content or regarding your own situation. So what we've done is that we've put together some of the most common questions in a pre-recorded Q&A session that will be released at the end of each week, because I think you'll get a lot out of these sessions. Now, let me just mention this, okay? This program is called Commitment Control 2.0, but as you can probably tell, everything we teach is not geared towards trying to manipulate a man or pressuring a man into committing to you. That's not what we stand for. We're all about teaching you ways to add so much value to your man that he is inspired to want to commit to you. I mean, think about that. What would that mean to your life? To have the ability to actually inspire your man to want to commit to you at a deeper level. Alright, so right now you may be thinking, is this the right decision for me? Is this the right program for me? Well, guess what? I can't make that decision for you, of course. But what I can do is I can share with you what some of the other women have experienced going through the first version of commitment control. Now, I have to talk real fast because there's been so many amazing reviews we've received, and I actually don't want to bore you to death with me reading all of them out. So let me just read a few of them, pick out a few of them, and share with you what they experienced as they went through the course. I've got one here from Diana. Now, this is a picture of her and her new boyfriend, but things were quite different when she first enrolled in our program. She enrolled into the first version of commitment control because for years she had men walking away from her, and she was just so sick of being in that friend zone with men. Only a few weeks after she took the course, here's what she said. Hi Renee and David. I want to give a big thank you for all your amazing effort and support in the commitment control program. The guy I met during my travels in one of the pictures sent is now my boyfriend. He actually enjoys the challenges I throw him and said I shouldn't stop doing it. He's feeling happy and he has a lot of respect for me. He said in his own words that he is committed to this relationship. Now it is hard work, but it's worth all the effort. I am always striving to grow and learn every day. Now, these pictures were taken last weekend, our first Valentine's celebration ever. And she mentioned this about a year ago. I believe she's now married to the same man. Is that correct, Renee?
Yeah, she is. I got an email from her a while back thanking us. I don't know if I'd forwarded that email to you or not.
Oh, great to hear. I forget these things sometimes. Here's what another member, Eva, had to say about the first version of commitment control. Dear Renee and David, thank you for your program, Commitment Control. I'm very careful with how I spend the little money I have. I'm 27 and have paid for relationship advice programs before. They did not even come close to the quality and real-life applicability of what you offer. Now that I've gone through Commitment Control, I cannot imagine life without the understanding and the insights that has lit up my heart. I feel rejuvenated and more at peace at the whole idea of dealing with my men, and myself. I love how clear and sound your program is. I want every single woman who reads your blog to know that whatever they're spending their money on these days, it can wait. And they would do themselves a tremendous favor by joining Commitment Control. They probably can't even imagine how useful it is, but it is. I used to think I could piece it all together from the info in your blogs for free and eventually figure it out for myself, but now I think that is not true. The rhythm of your program is priceless for the sense of confidence it will instill in the participant. And I'm grateful to you guys from the bottom of my heart, especially if my heart were as deep as the universe is vast. Thank you. So that was Eva. Here is another lady. Her name is Patty. She's 52 years old. When she took the first version of Commitment Control, she was in a horrible place in her existing relationship, but she just couldn't let it go. She was miserable and she didn't realize how her man was lying and manipulating her at the same time. A year later, after she took Commitment Control, Patty sent us an email telling us that she was in a completely different place in her life. She was in love and happy, and her journey turned out to be this amazing love story, which was actually picked up by the local newspaper. Now, this photo you're looking at right now is actually her and her man that was taken for the news article. And as you can see, she is no longer miserable. Here's what she said. I was so miserable that I was determined to not date for at least 2 years so I could finish my PhD, but God had other plans. You had been concerned that I was afraid to open up to another man, and I was. I grudgingly answered an email from Match.com and thought I did everything to scare him off. You see, at 52, I can recognize a really good man, especially after the loser I was with. Effortlessly, we fell in love. We have very different backgrounds, but the same values. And we had this whirlwind courtship, and we got married after only 4 months. I am never impulsive, but with this, I have no doubts. I have never been treated this well or appreciated this much. I am definitely treated like a princess. I began following you for help with a loser, but ended up with a prince. I wish I would have followed your advice better and moved away from that from the crumbs guy earlier, but your advice about the work I needed to do on myself paid off in many more ways. I know my new relationship is a blessing that few people ever receive, especially so quickly. I mean, your advice was spot on. If I would have listened to you earlier, I could have saved myself a lot of heartache. Thank you for your dedication and hard work. That was from Patty. Thank you, Patty, and she's a lovely lady. The next one is from Laurie. She enrolled because she had been in this long-term relationship that wasn't going anywhere and she didn't know what to do. Here's what she said a few months after taking the first version of Commitment Control. Hi Renee, I just want to share my exciting news with you that I am engaged. I was a subscriber to The Feminine Woman and then have since gotten Commitment Control. I don't think of being engaged as a sort of accomplishment that says your advice really works. Because your relationship advice will never stop inspiring me, even in my marriage, to help me stay confident and open to passion. But I think it's a huge testimony to how far relationships can come and what can come out of a crazy 2.5-year roller coaster relationship. I've always known he was my soulmate, but creating the environment and attitude within myself that has enabled it to prosper and endure is largely to your help. Thank you so much for what you do. It is so important, words cannot express enough. Here is a fun recent pic we took at a friend's wedding. The whole dance floor ended up in the pool, so you know it was a success. Thank you so much, Laurie. Now, I can go on, but I feel like I am starting to bore everyone with all these reviews because at the end of the day, what really matters is for you to take action and experience that feeling of love and security that we all want in a relationship. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this masterclass. Now, there's a link below where you can join us in Commitment Control 2. But regardless, we wish you all the very best. Alright, thanks again for joining us in this masterclass, and we will talk to you very soon.